Good morning, students. In our previous video, we have discussed summary theme and title of chapter quality. Today, we will proceed with the same topic. By the end of this video, you will be able to learn about the narrative methodology of the story quality, how was the narrator acquainted to the Gessler brothers, the quality of the shoes made by Gessler brothers, the physical appearance of the protagonist, that is the younger Gessler brother. Let us first of all discuss the style of the chapter quality. Narrative methodology. The story is narrated in the first person. Now what does this mean? This means that the narrator himself is referring to himself as I. The first person narrative helps to provide a realistic picture of the struggle faced by the handicraft industry and artisans during the Industrial Revolution by referring to the actual encounter between the narrator and the artisan. Now what is the meaning of encounter, children? Encounter means meeting. And what is the meaning of artisan? Artisan here refers to Gessler brothers, otherwise it means craftsman. So in this paragraph, we have by now read that the narrator himself is referring to him as I, and the whole chapter is in I, that is the first person pronoun. The plot of the story is constructed in a rather conventional way. Now what is conventional way? Means a traditional way of writing, with all the happenings depicted through 5 essential elements of the plot. Which are those 5 elements? Let us read. The first element is exposition. Now children, what is an exposition? It is a comprehensive description or explanation of an idea. So this exposition introduces the Gessler brothers, their shop and their passion for their business of shoemaking. Then the next point is rising action. Now rising action refers to the events between the exposition and the climax. Now here we need to know what is a climax. So a climax is the highest point of interest and turning point of the story. So this rising action is between exposition and climax. Here the events of the story become complicated and reveal the conflict in the story. Now what is a conflict? Conflict is a situation when something is in opposite. So conflict means to be in opposition to something. In this story, the Gessler brothers are faced with stiff competition from big firms which use machines and advertise their goods. So there exists an external conflict between the Gessler brothers and the big firms. While we are talking about the external conflict, it was between the Gessler brothers and the Industrial Revolution. There is also an internal conflict within the Gessler brothers. What was that? They were in a dilemma. What is a dilemma, children? It's a delicate situation in which one has to choose between two things. To choose either between their traditional mode of shoemaking, that means they would not compromise on the quality, or they wanted to shift to the modern commercialized way. Now the dilemma was whether they should leave the quality and make the products like the industries were making, or they should keep sticking to their ideal of quality. Now what do they decide, children? They finally decide that they will stick to the quality. The Gessler brothers, however, stick to their ideal. Ideal is their high principle or their high values. That is the reason why they lose 1/2 of their shop. Then the third point comes, children, that is climax. Now as I've already told you, climax is the highest point of interest and turning point of the story. The climax of the story is reached when Mr. Gessler's elder brother dies because he could not get over the pain of losing a part of his shop. Mr. Gessler suffers on account of losing his brother. This Mr. Gessler, children, is the younger brother, the protagonist of the story. So Mr. Gessler suffers on the account of losing his brother as well as a part of his shop. So he has lost two things, that is his own brother and also a part of his shop. It makes the reader anxious. What is the meaning of anxious, children? Anxious means worried, to know if Mr. Gessler would change or he would continue to suffer more hardships. So that is the climax of the story, children, where the readers want to know what decision would the younger Gessler brother take, whether he would stick to his ideals or he would go by the flow. The next point, children, comes is falling action. Now what actually is falling action? Falling action is a literary device or a part of a literary plot that occurs after the climax has been reached and the conflict has been resolved. So here the events and the complications begin to resolve. The narrator finds Mr. Gessler looking much older than his age. Again, children, this Mr. Gessler refers to the protagonist of the story, that is the younger Gessler brother. So he looks older than his age, feeble. What is the meaning of feeble, children? Feeble means weak and in a state of pain. Mr. Gessler tells the narrator that it is a slack time for his business. So what is the meaning of slack time? Slack means low or inactive, that is not active. The narrator orders a number of pair of shoes, though without the hope of getting them made. He knows he won't be able to receive that order. Still, he orders a number of pair of shoes. But he finally receives his shoes, and that too, the best ever he had got from the Gessler brothers. The last point, children, is denouement. What is the point? Denouement. This is the final resolution of the story. So the story comes to an end here. The narrator visits the Gessler brothers and finds that Mr. Gessler has died and his shop has been taken over by a big firm. So children, we have done 5 points of narrative methodology: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action and denouement. Now let us start the reading of the chapter Quality, children. I knew him from the days of my extreme youth because he made my father's boots. Who do you think is I here, children? I is the narrator. As we had already done in narrative methodology, that this chapter is in first person pronoun. Him. Who can be him? Him is the person who made his father's boots. So I know him from the days of my extreme youth. What is the meaning of extreme youth, children? It means when youth is at peak. Inhabiting with his elder brother. Who was inhabiting with his elder brother? The shoemaker who made his father's boots. Inhabiting means living. So the shoemaker was living with his elder brother in 2 shops let into one. So there were 2 shops which were in one. In a small by street. What is the meaning of by street, children? It means sub street. Now no more. What is he referring to? He is referring to the shop which earlier was there but is no more there now. But then most fashionably placed in the West End. So where was it situated? It was situated in the West End. So the narrator is going back into time, that is during the days of his childhood, and says that he knew the Gessler brothers when he was in extreme youth because they made his father's boots. The younger Gessler brother lived with his elder brother in 2 shops joined into one, situated in a by street, but it does not exist now. But at that point in time, it was there and it was quite famous. Now let us further start the reading. That tenement. Underline the word tenement, children. Tenement is a building divided into apartments. So that tenement had a certain quiet distinction. Write down the meaning of distinction. A unique feature. There was no sign upon its face. Whose face, children? That means the sign board on the shop. So there was no sign upon its face that he made for any of the royal family, merely his own German name of Gessler brothers. So this suggests that the shop was named after the two brothers, that is the Gessler brothers. And in window, a few pair of boots. So this shows that there was a window in which some pair of boots were kept. I remember that it always troubled me to account for. Underline the phrase to account for. It means to explain. Those unwearing boots. Unwearing children, write down the meaning. Unwearing means unchanging boots. In the window, for he made only what was ordered, reaching nothing down, and it seemed so inconceivable. Write down the meaning of inconceivable, children. It means unimaginable, that what he made could ever fail to fit. Now, this paragraph tells us that they lived in a tenement which had quietness. That was the unique feature of that. And they did not advertise what they worked for. They never said that they worked for the royal family. The simple signboard was the Gessler brothers. And in the display window were a few pair of shoes kept as specimen. And the narrator was always worried, or the thought troubled him about those shoes. He thought, whose shoes were they? For they always made shoes for those people who have ordered them. So the narrator always thought, if those shoes were the shoes which didn't fit a particular client or customer. But it cannot be so, as those shoes, the ones which were kept in the window and the ones which were made by the Gessler brothers, were a perfect fit. So he was always worried about whose shoes were they. Had he bought them to put there? That too seemed inconceivable. He would never have tolerated in his house leather on which he had not worked himself. Now the narrator feels, could these be shoes bought by him and put there? Then he feels, no, that cannot also be. For the younger Gessler would never allow or would never buy anyone else's shoes. Why does the narrator feel so, children? Maybe because the younger Gessler was a fastidious man. He was very attentive and he was very concerned about accuracy and detail. He would buy the leather himself with which he would make shoes. Besides, they were too beautiful. The pair of pumps, so inexpressibly slim. The patent leathers with cloth tops, making water come into one's mouth. Now, what is the meaning of patent leather, children? Patent leather, a type of coated leather that has a glossy finish. Making water come into one's mouth. The tall brown riding boots with marvelous sooty glow. Now, what is the meaning of sooty, children? Sooty means covered with black powder, or you may say something dull. As if though new, they had been worn 100 years. Now, what sort of boots were there in the window? These were the pairs of pumps which were inexpressibly slim and beautiful. Then the shoes made up of patent leather with cloth tops. Now, what is patent leather? I have already told you, it's a type of coated leather that has a high glossy finish. And those were so beautiful that anyone who saw them, his mouth would water. Then there were tall brown riding boots with marvelous sooty glow. Sooty means a little dull. So, dull shoes, which of course were new, but it seemed as if they had been worn for 100 years. Those pairs could have been made by the one who saw before him the sole of the boot. So truly were the prototypes incarnating the very spirit of the footgear. So children, what is the meaning of prototypes here? Prototypes means a first version of a device from which the others are developed. So The boots have been personified in these lines. You can see sole, S is capital, boot, B is capital. So the boots have been personified as if they have soles. Now the shoes were so beautiful as if the maker has instilled the very soul of boots in those shoes. And also they were the prototypes. That means those were the first kind of boots according to narrator. Seeing those boots, another would have been made by others. Now let us see some examples of the boots kept there. A pair of pumps. So these are the pair of pumps. And tall riding boots. These are the tall riding boots. These thoughts, of course, came to me later, though even when I was promoted to him at the age of perhaps 14. Now children, the narrator when was a child got his shoes made from someone else, as the Gessler brothers did not make shoes for children. So all the above mentioned thoughts came to him later when he himself started getting his shoes made from the Gessler brother, perhaps at the age of 14. Some inkling haunted me. Underline the phrase, children. Some inkling haunted me. It means there was a slight suspicion of the dignity of himself and his brother. For to make boots, such boots as he made, seemed to me then and still seems to me mysterious and wonderful. Now the narrator had a strange suspicion, rather it was like a mystery for the narrator in his adolescence. And what was that? That how the Gessler brothers made such beautiful shoes. And he has the same suspicion even now. I remember well my shy remark one day, while stretching out to him my youthful foot. Isn't it awfully hard to do, Mr. Gessler? And his answer, given with a sudden smile from out of his sardonic redness of his beard, it is an art. So, it is an art is German accent saying making shoes is an art. Now, once during his youth, the narrator asked Mr. Gessler, wasn't making shoes awfully hard? To which he replied in German accent, it is an art, which meant making shoes was an art. Himself, he was a little as if made from leather, with his yellow crinkly face and crinkly reddish hair and beard. So children, what is the meaning of crinkly? It means wrinkled. And neat folds slanting down his cheeks to the corners of his mouth, and his guttural and one-toned voice. So what is guttural, children? Guttural means harsh sounding. So his guttural and one-toned voice for leather is a sardonic substance and stiff and slow of purpose. Now children, this paragraph tells us about the physical appearance of both the Gessler brothers. The narrator felt that the younger Gessler looked more like leather. Why? He had yellow wrinkled face and crinkly reddish hair and beard and neat folds slanting down his cheeks to the corners of his mouth. He had a guttural voice and a one-toned voice. Now the narrator felt that the younger brother was made of leather, for leather is a sardonic substance. What is the meaning of sardonic substance in this line? It means that there is a feeling of superiority in leather, and the same feeling of being superior also showed up from the younger Gessler brother's face. And that was the character of his face. So superiority showed up from his face, save that his eyes, save means except his eyes did not have that feeling of being superior, save that his eyes, which were grey blue, had in them the simple gravity of one secretly possessed by the ideal. So what is the meaning of ideal, children? Ideal means high values. Now, his eyes did not have that feeling of being superior, except his eyes were grey blue, which had the simple gravity and which showed that he possessed the ideal. What is that ideal? The ideal of quality. His elder brother was so very like him. So in the stanza above, in the lines above, we have read the physical appearance of the younger Gessler. And these lines will tell us about the physical appearance of the elder one. So his elder brother was so very like him, though watery and paler in every way, with a great industry. So children, what is the meaning of industry? Industry means hard work. That sometimes in early days I was not quite sure of him until the interview was over. So his elder brother was also similar in looks, which means both of them looked very much alike, though the elder brother was a little paler than the younger one, but he had a great hard-working quality. Then I knew that it was he if the words, "I will ask my brother," had not been spoken, and that if they had, it was his elder brother. Now both of them looked so similar that the narrator could not recognize who he was talking to. So he could only recognize who he was talking to after having a sort of interview with them. If the words in the conversation, "I'll ask my brother," were there, then it was surely the elder brother, right? So this paragraph also tells us that the younger one was more in command and the elder one didn't do anything without consulting with his younger brother. When one grew old and wild and ran up bills, what is the meaning of ran up bills, children? Ran up bills means to accumulate a great debt. One somehow never ran them up with Gessler brothers. We'll do this paragraph line to line, children, for this paragraph is a little tricky. So when one grew old and mature and gets very wild, he often accumulates a lot of debt by purchasing things on loans and so, and he has to give a lot of money to a lot of people. But in the case of Gessler brothers, it is never like that. That person always paid his bills on time. Now what can be the reason for that? It is possible that the person was a fan of Gessler brothers' work and the person didn't want his equation with Gessler brothers to get spoiled. So if a person started receiving boots from Gessler brothers, he would instantly become their fan, and it would never be a condition or a situation where he would have to owe them and give them money. The person would want to be their client forever. It would not have seemed becoming to go there and stretch out one's foot to that blue iron spectacle glance, owing him for more than say 2 pairs, just the comfortable reassurance that one was still his client. Now, it would never happen that a person gets into the shop of the Gessler brothers and then gives him an order of preparing shoes, and Gessler brothers would ask them to stretch their foot for measurement, and the glance or the look at which the Gessler brothers observe the foot from their iron spectacle, that is a perfect look from their spectacle, giving the measurement would not have been possible if the person was owing Gessler brother money for even 2 pair of shoes that he had made in the past, which means a person always wanted to be the client of the Gessler brother, so they never had any outstanding amount with them. So as to be the permanent client of the Gessler brothers, the people often paid them all the bills. They never owed any money to the Gessler brothers. For it was not possible to go to him very often. His boots lasted terribly, having something beyond the temporary, some, as it were, a sense of boots stitched into them. Now children, what is the meaning of the word essensed? Essensed means sole. S-O-U-L, sole. So if a person got his boots made from the Gessler brothers, it was a very nice problem that the boots were very perfect, and they were so perfect with so many qualities that the client would not have to go to the Gessler brother for repair or for mending of the shoes, right? So they did not go to them for quite long, as the boots lasted very long, and they were not temporary like other ordinary shoes. They were special, as they were made with a lot of focus. So whichever shoes the Gessler brothers made were of the best quality, as if the sole of boots was stitched into them. Children, for your homework, you will read pages 25 and 26 and write down the difficult words on your copy. Also revise the narrative methodology. Thank you.